It's Monday, I think, yes. April 27th, 6 o'clock. I'm getting ready for some more family read aloud. Tried to throw myself together quickly because I don't know, these cold, wet days just make it hard to motivate myself. um, and I have one day left of schoolwork. So I don't know. Just an off day for me, I guess. But I'm here, I'm trying, doing my best. um, we are going to read some more of Ida B. and her plans to maximize fun, avoid disaster, and possibly save the world by Katherine Hannigan. When we left off on Friday, Ida B had just read aloud to the class. Remember, because her teacher, Miss W, um, wasn't feeling well and was having trouble with her voice, so she asked Ida to read aloud to the class since she knew Ida had read the book. And this came right after Ida B had been helping Ronnie with his schoolwork, one of her classmates. So Miss W seems to be honing in on what Ida's her strengths and just trying to understand her and to get close to her. And it's been, I think it's been good for Ida B. Um, in this, in her re-entry back into public school. Now that her mom is sick. Remember, she's in 4th grade. Okay, we can do this. Okay, chapter 21. I'll pick up with chapter 21. Um, so she had just finished reading aloud, and then she was taking the bus home. Okay, chapter 21. How was the school today, Ida B? Mama and Daddy would ask me every day after I first went back to Ernest B. Lawson Elementary School. And every day I'd say okay, which now also stood for overwhelming calamity. Well, what'd you do? And I would just tell them the facts, hard and cold like my heart. We had English, then we had science, then we went to the gym, with no ups or downs or any part of the real meat in there. It was the same thing every day, and it was so boring and old and dry like stale bread I couldn't believe they kept trying for as long as they did. After a while, though, they gave up. They'd just say, "How are you doing, Ida B?" "Okay," I'd mumble, and that would be it. I didn't think they needed any more words than that to let them know that there was nothing close to joy floating around inside me. But this day was different. The good feeling I had from reading that story out loud had been growing a bit by bit all afternoon, till it ended up being a full-blown happiness by the time I got home. I'd keep thinking about what I did and how it felt, and the warm brightness in me would get bigger and stronger and shinier every time. My legs wanted to skip down the drive instead of walk. My mouth wanted to smile instead of scowl. My arms wanted to hug somebody instead of holding my backpack to my chest like a shield. My heart was horrified. That happiness would not be satisfied staying inside me either. It wanted to be shared, and it didn't mind who it shared itself with, including Mamma and Daddy. I could just imagine having dinner with the two of them and all kinds of good feelings spelling out of me. There I'd be, grinning and gabbing, and the next thing you'd know, Mamma and Daddy would be thinking that I had transformed into my old perky self. That school was the best thing that had ever happened to me, and maybe everything had worked out just fine after all, and that would not be acceptable. I was not going to let that happiness compromise my stand that, even though good things might happen in the world from time to time, nothing was right in my family or in my valley. So I tried to get rid of some of it before dinner time by telling Rufus and Lulu about my out loud reading adventure. I sat them both on my bed, and while Lulu glared at Rufus with the deadliest disdain, I told them my story. Two thumps of Rufus's tail and a bored yawn from Lulu, though, didn't quiet that feeling down at all. By the time I sat down to dinner, that happiness was doing somersaults of excitement in my stomach. It was jiggling with delight at the prospect of telling Mamma and Daddy about my day. It was itching to talk about how pleased I was with Miss W. and the stories she gave me, and reading Alexander Potemkin and the space shuttle to Planet Z most of all. It even wanted to start chatting about Ronnie. I tried to get away before any of the pleasure leaked out of me. "I'm not hungry. Can I be excused?" I asked. Daddy, however, was prepared to spoil my plan. You need to eat your dinner, Ida B., he said. Eat a little bit, honey, Mama added. Well, by that point, my heart was beating extra hard, trying to keep that happiness down and quiet, and it was losing ground fast. I realized I'd have to let some of it out so I could rein the rest of it in and get control of my insides again. I focused on my carrots, lining them up with my fork vertically, then horizontally, then zigzag, and I released one tiny tidbit of cheer. I read a book out loud to my class today, I said, struggling to keep my voice low and even. Daddy looked up and stared like he didn't quite know what to do with a bit of conversation from me. Oh, Ida B., did you like it? Mama asked, smiling at me. I just nodded my head. What did you read? Mama kept on. Just a book about a girl, I told those carrots. Did you know the book, or was that the first time you read it? I read it before. Were you scared reading in front of all those people, Ida B.? I shrugged like it was such a not big deal I could hardly recall. Not really. Was it wonderful? Baby Mama asked. As soon as Mama said it, I felt every drop of the goodness from reading that story. It flooded my insides, and I couldn't stop the happiness from pouring out of me. Yes, I said. Then I looked right at Mama for the first time in what seemed like forever, and she wasn't looking at me, but into me. She was pulling me to her with her eyes like she used to do. All of a sudden I could see the light that was Mama's shining out of her eyes. I couldn't help smiling at it. Be careful, my heart warned me. But I was having a hard time remembering that there was anything to be careful about. Because if I just looked at Mama's eyes and not her bald head or her pale skin, I could tell the part of her I thought had gone away forever was still there and glowing, only from deep down inside her. The part of me that knew how good it would feel to be held and cuddled was yearning, but now having those kinds of feelings scared me too. Thinking about being close to Mama and loving her like that, and knowing that things would still be terrible, and then I'd have to get used to staying away from her, and not liking her all over would be too hard. That's enough, my heart told me as gently as it could. I looked back down, away from Mama's glowing, and right then all of the pain from the past months was in me and around me. I stared at my carrots, arranged them in an X, and that happiness was finally stilled and silent. Can I be excused now? I asked. Are you sure you're done, Ida B.? Mama asked. Yes, ma'am, I told the table, and I slid quietly off my chair, out of the kitchen, and up to my room. And it's funny, but telling Mama and Daddy just that little bit ended up being worse than telling them nothing. Being in the same room but talking to each other like we were on opposite sides of the ocean turned the best thing into the loneliest thing. I was missing the old Mama and even the old Daddy more than ever. Chapter 22. That Saturday, the intruders came to visit. I was sitting on the front porch and I saw a strange car, a big white one, come down the road and turn left at the T, heading down to the building site and park. I ran behind our house, around the base of the mountain, and through the woods till I was directly across from their partly finished house. I climbed an old maple named Norbert, who wasn't talking to me, but wasn't giving me a hard time either. I was surrounded by his leaves, and I sat up there so I could watch those people, but they couldn't see me. They were already out of the car, looking around the outside of the house. There was a mom, a dad, a little boy, and a girl who was a bit taller than me and looked real familiar. At first, they were all walking around the house together, and the parents were saying things like, "Oh, Ray, didn't this turn out well?" And "We'll have to talk to the contractor about this." But I wasn't minding them. I kept watching the girl. Then she turned around, and I saw her face full on with the sun shining on it, too. I had to hold tight to that tree's branches to stay put when I realized who it was. That girl was Claire, the one from my class, the one who asked me if I wanted to play the first day I was back at school. The parents headed to the far side of the lot, and Claire and her brother found the hill of dirt the bulldozer had made. They ran over there, climbed up it, and then tried to see how fast they could run down it without falling over. They were laughing and looking around to see what other kinds of fun they could have, and the whole bunch of them were just plain happy. Nobody, I could tell, was thinking that this land used to belong to somebody else, that there were trees that lived here that had names and were alive, and they got cut down so this house could get built. None of them was thinking that the only reason they were here was because my mama got sick, but I was. When those kids were done climbing the dirt hill, they started wandering around on the land, and pretty soon Claire spotted one of my signs on a tree. "Look at that," she said to the little boy. They both ran over, and she read it loud to him. "Typhoons known to occur here. Water rats abound." "What's a typhoon?" the boy asked. "It's like a hurricane, but I didn't think they happened around here." They studied my sign for a couple of minutes, and the little boy pointed to a part of it and said, "That rat is funny," and they giggled together at my rat's pointy nose and buck teeth. I felt my temper go from a simmer to a low boil just like that. "Hey, there's another one over there," Claire yelled, and they both raced over to look at it. "I like this one better," he said. "Me too, it's a pretty good snake." "Are there really snakes like that around here?" The boy's eyes were big, and he was ready to be afraid. "No," she laughed. "These signs are jokes. They're supposed to be funny." "Oh," he said and laughed too. "Let's see if we can find some more." They were off, like they were on a treasure hunt, going from clue to clue, running and laughing and having the best time. They loved my signs. It was like I'd made a game for them, a welcome to the neighborhood game. I went from a low boil to a bubbling over the top, the lids hardly on the pot, furious one, in about 2 seconds. Now you might think that knowing that this girl was in my class, and remembering that she tried to be nice to me, might slow me down or soften me up a bit. But it did just the opposite. For some reason, knowing this girl was nice and had friends and liked school and had a mom and dad and brother and they did fun things together made everything 100 times worse. Knowing that it was her who was building a new house on my land, and it was her who cut down the trees, it was her who would be roaming around in my valley. Well, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it so much that I couldn't sit still and I couldn't stay quiet. Claire and her brother got close to the tree I was sitting in, still giggling and talking, and right then I boiled over, and I couldn't have held it back if I'd wanted to. I jumped down out of the tree, my hands waving, my mouth yelling, "This is not your property! Get out! Now!" And I stood there, my arms raised like a barrier, with my teeth bared and a ferocious expression on my face. They were so surprised they both jumped, their arms went up in the air, and their eyes and their mouths turned into big O's. The little boy started to cry, and for a second a part of me felt a little bit bad. But then my new heart told me, "No! They're the bad ones! They're the invaders! We are not giving anything else away!" And the part of me that felt bad got shut right down. Well, it seemed we were standing there like that forever. My hands were fists now, my knees were bent, and I could hear my breathing, hard and heavy like a fearsome beast. I was not going to move unless it was to attack. Finally, Claire's face changed. Her mouth relaxed and her eyes got smaller and kind of sad. "Ida?" she asked, like a doe would talk if it could, gentle and soft and a little timid, like a hand extended, palm turned up. And there was that part of me again, the part that felt bad before, thinking it might get a word in. "Take it, Ida B," it said. "Take the hand extended." My hard, cold heart wouldn't have any of that mush. "No," it yelled. "Nobody gets in." And my body howled out loud, my face raised to the sky, the fiercest, scariest yell I didn't even know I had in me. "You are not allowed on my land! Go away!" I slashed and jabbed the air with my fists like they were just itching to pound something. When I opened my eyes and looked at the two of them, the little boy just turned around and ran away. He almost fell right over because he was trying to run faster than his short little legs were able. And I almost laughed out loud because that's how foul I was feeling. But she was still standing there staring at me. I looked back at her, eyes like slits and my mouth in a sneer, and yelled, "What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear me? You do not belong here!" She looked right into my eyes, with those doe eyes, crying now, not leaving like she was supposed to. I started to think that I would have to do something drastic soon because I couldn't stand there looking fierce and breathing heavy forever. But before I got too worked up again, she said, right to my eyes and my insides, "You're mean." And she turned around and walked away. I stood there, fist tight, still breathing like a bear, ready to holler all sorts of things at her, like "too bad" or "that's right, remember that, big baby." But right in the middle of my chest, where her doe-eyed look ended up, there was a heaviness that slowed me down and stopped me up. "I'm not mean, really. Come back," that soft, sappy part of me wanted to say. My rock-hard heart wouldn't have any of that, though. "Stop it," it yelled, and there was no more weakness or sad, sorry feelings allowed. I was the protector of the valley, and there was no use for mushiness. When I walked back to my house, through the woods and around the mountain, every step I took was heavy and horrible, stomping the ground. Every time my left foot came down, I said, "I." And every time my right foot hit the earth, I'd say, "One." So all the way home, my steps were beating the rhythm to those words, "I won, I won, I won." Chapter 23. I went to dinner that night, all set for a tussle. I was feeling pretty confident after my victory that morning, and I was thinking I was ready to take on my most formidable foes, Mama and especially Daddy. Maybe there was no going back to the way things were before Mama was sick. For sure, there was no bringing back those trees that had been cut down. But that didn't mean there was no use in those two people feeling miserable about the sadness and destruction they and their completely unacceptable and breaking their word in 100 places decisions had brought into the valley and to me. That didn't mean I couldn't show them there was somebody in that valley and in that house who remembered what was right and good, and her name was Ida B. Applewood. My cold, hard heart was in top form, and it was not taking prisoners, including sick ones, tired ones, or overburdened ones in particular. It was only going to accept complete surrender, which included a promise signed by all parties that would be valid for eternity and beyond, that things were going to change around here right that very minute. I had written the whole thing out that afternoon and had the document in my back pocket. We, the undersigned, it began, because I had looked at that sort of thing up in the encyclopedia, solemnly promise there'll be no more selling of land, cutting of trees, killing of things, or sending children to school against their will, effective immediately. There was space for our signatures and the seal of Ida B's completely just and forever binding legal services in the lower right-hand corner. I'd planned a speech for Mama and Daddy, too, and I had it all memorized. It started with, I'm going to tell you two something right now, so you better listen up. Once I had their full and undivided attention, I'd keep going with questions like, don't you people care that everything has changed around here? It's gone from just about righter than right to a million miles beyond wrong? Don't you care that those trees got cut down and they're gone forever? And doesn't it matter to you one half molecule that I am just plain miserable? I was going to finish with a squinty-eyed skewer aimed directly at Daddy. You said that we were the Earth's caretakers, I'd say. You said we were supposed to leave things better than we found them. I don't think those trees that got cut down would say you'd taken very good care of them, do you? Then, when the tears were flowing and apologies were coming at me from both sides, and Mama and Daddy were saying to me, what should we do, Ida B? What do you think we should do now to try to make things right? I would pull that document out of my back pocket. We would all sign it with my red pen to signify blood, but not for real. And we could start talking about a plan to get things back to normal around here. I was still hearing that I won in my head as I stomped into the kitchen, sat down, and served myself like always. When we were all done passing and pouring, I cleared my throat to get it ready for an army of words to pass through it. I put my hands on the table, looked at those two people sitting across from me, and opened my mouth wide so the words could come out big and fierce. And Mama cut me off. Ida B, your daddy and I have something we want to talk to you about. My mouth was still wide open, but now it was hanging there out of surprise and a little dismay, because I hadn't figured on an interruption. Ida B, Daddy said, we've been thinking about the south field that's been lying fallow for a while, and that it might be a good place to plant some more apple trees. We were thinking that we could clear and plant it, the three of us, maybe this spring when I'm feeling better, Mama said. And that maybe you'd like it to be your orchard, baby, just for you. It would be your land, your trees, your apples. What do you think, Ida B? Now, first of all, when you get as worked up as I was, it doesn't go away just because somebody else starts talking. And second of all, I could see the plan those two had cooked up together, and I wasn't going to eat a bite of it. I wasn't going to pretend that planting new trees would replace the ones that got cut down. I wouldn't believe that Ida B's brand spanking new orchard was ever going to make me forget about Bernice, or Winston, or Jacques. And there, giving me a piece of land and some trees that I didn't even know yet was not going to erase the months of death and demolition and not enough love to fill a teacup that I'd been through. In about 1 1/3 seconds, my brain turned that big long speech I'd spent all afternoon putting together into one sentence that came out of my mouth, loud and strong. There was no making up for the terrible things that happened this year, I said. And I thought that would be all, but it felt so good saying it, I kept going. You can't bring back Winston or Bernice or buy me off with a new orchard, I said, my voice getting louder with every word. And you can't make everything that's wrong right with a patch of land and some new trees. Now my hands were pointing and waving, and I got my eyes into the meanest slits I could manage. Then I thought of the hardest thing I could say to them. And how would I know you wouldn't sell the land anyway, I yelled. How do I know you wouldn't let those new trees get cut down too? You already broke your word in about 10 million ways when you sold the land and sent me back to school. So why should I trust you? And just like earlier in the day, I was breathing heavy and looking fierce. People were staring at me, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do next. But Daddy remedied that dilemma for me. He slammed his fork down so the table shook and the milk glasses jittered, and I jumped in my seat. His hands were clenched in fists, his face was red, and you could just about see the blood running fast through the big veins sticking out on his arms and the sides of his head. Without thinking about it, I was sitting up straight with my hands holding on to the side of my chair just in case he decided my presence was no longer needed in that particular room and he was going to help me to remove myself. Ida B, he said through his teeth without moving his lips, looking like he was talking to his plate, but he was talking to me. Well, when somebody's talking and his lips are not moving, it's not a good sign. I pushed my chair back and I pointed my feet toward the door in case they needed to start running in that particular direction. Daddy took a deep breath. You could hear it go in through his nose, and he pushed it out through his teeth so it sounded like a hiss. Then he took another breath, and this one wasn't so loud. His color went from deep purple to medium magenta. He kept going with the breathing till his face got to light red, then bright pink, and he looked at me. Ida B, he said again, with his palms flat on the table now. Since your mama got sick, sometimes I've been so angry, I thought I could yell so loud and for so long that the mountain would turn into a pile of little rocks. And sometimes I've been so sad I thought if I started crying I may never stop. Daddy paused, but it was just to get some more of those cleansing breaths. None of us likes what's happened around here, Ida B, but we're trying to make the best of it, he went on. If we stayed angry or sad all of the time, things would still be hard, but we'd be miserable on top of it. He looked down at his plate again, and Mama put her hand on his arm and started rubbing it. I'd hardly moved an inch since Daddy had slammed down his fork. I was still sitting there, like a marble statue of Distressa, patron saint of dread and dumbfoundedness, mouth and eyes wide open, arms and legs sticking out, and everything as stiff as a board. Finally, Mama broke the silence. We know it's been hard, honey, she said, looking at me but holding on to Daddy. We probably should have talked about it more. I guess we all got caught up in our own troubles and worries and figured talking about it wouldn't help you at all. So she smiled and put her palm on my cheek, like a cradle for my face. Sorry there have been so many hard changes, Ida B. We did what we thought was best, given the circumstances. Now, a part of me knew that those people who were my mama and daddy were trying their hardest to make things right. Part of me knew that they were telling me they cared about those trees, about the land, and about me. That same part of me knew there was something called love sitting just across the table from me. A hug if I wanted it, and talking and trying and warm feelings in the next moment if I'd just say, all right, even if I only whispered it. That part of me was too small now, though, and my heart had made it go live behind my left knee, so it didn't get much to say. My cold, hard heart did. It told me loud and clear, do not let those people in again. So I looked straight at Mama and Daddy, pushed back my chair and put 1,000 miles between us. Without asking if I could be excused, I stood up, turned around, went to my room, and shut the door tight. Good job, my heart told me, you won again. But I woke up in the middle of the night with a terrible ache coming from behind my left knee, and it stayed with me for the rest of the weekend. That's where we're going to leave off for today. We'll pick up with chapter 24 tomorrow at 6 p.m. Have a good night. Bye.